I'll never forget the first night I started as the new night janitor at Briarwood Institute. The place was an old psychiatric hospital turned research center, a massive, crumbling building at the edge of town that had seen better days. Most people in town avoided the place, saying it was haunted. Some said the old patients never left, that they lingered in the dark corners of the building, waiting for someone to notice them. I never believed in ghosts or anything like that, but I needed a job, and this was the only one hiring. They were paying well too well, actually, and looking back, maybe that should have been my first clue. My shift started at 10 p.m., and when I arrived, the head janitor, a guy named Joe, was waiting for me in the lobby. Joe was an older man with deep lines on his face and eyes that looked like they'd seen one too many things. He shook my hand, gave me a quick tour, and laid out the rules. "Lock every door behind you," he said firmly. "And whatever you do, don't go down to the third basement." I laughed a little, thinking he was joking, but he didn't crack a smile. "There's nothing down there you need to see," he added, his voice so serious it made my skin crawl. I nodded, trying to play it cool, but his warning stuck with me. The first couple of hours were quiet. I went from floor to floor, emptying trash cans, wiping down desks, the usual stuff. The building was old, but it had been updated with all the latest security measures, so I felt pretty safe. It was just me, the hum of the lights, and the echo of my footsteps. I didn't mind it, even enjoyed the peace and quiet. But as the night wore on, the silence began to feel heavier, as if the walls themselves were pressing down on me. Around midnight, I was cleaning one of the labs on the second floor when I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the hallway. I stopped, holding my breath, listening. The noise was soft, almost hesitant, like someone dragging their nails along the wall. I stepped out into the hallway, peering down both ends, but it was empty. The noise had stopped. I shook it off, convincing myself it was just the building settling. But as I moved to the next room, I heard it again. Closer this time. The scratching was slow, rhythmic, echoing through the empty halls. My mind raced, trying to find a rational explanation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. By the time I reached the east wing, the air had grown colder. I could see my breath in the dim light, little clouds forming and dissipating in the silence. Then, just as I turned to open the next door, I caught a glimpse of something in my peripheral vision, a shadow, darting just out of sight. I spun around, my heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just the empty hallway stretching out before me. The silence was suffocating. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. "Get a grip, man," I muttered to myself, but the words felt hollow. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination, the product of too many ghost stories and a few too many horror movies. But the feeling lingered, heavy and oppressive, like a dark cloud hanging over me. As I made my way back to the janitor's closet for supplies, I glanced down the stairs leading to the lower floors. I'd almost forgotten Joe's warning about the third basement. Almost. The stairs seemed to stretch down into darkness, as if they led somewhere much deeper than just another floor. I shivered, telling myself it was just a basement, but a part of me knew that wasn't true. I grabbed my supplies, did a quick mental check of the tasks left for the night, and forced myself to keep moving. I was almost done, just a few more rooms. I could finish, clock out, and forget about all of this. But as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking, just out of sight. Then, just as I was finishing up in the main corridor, the lights flickered. They didn't go out completely, but they dimmed enough to cast strange shadows along the walls. That's when I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging footsteps coming from down the hall. I froze, gripping my mop handle like a lifeline, straining my ears to make sure I wasn't imagining it. But the footsteps continued, each step echoing in the silence, coming closer and closer. I knew I was alone. Joe had left hours ago, and there was no one else on duty that night. Yet, someone or something was walking toward me. I backed up, inching toward the stairwell. I couldn't bring myself to look down the hall, afraid of what I might see. The footsteps grew louder, and I could feel this strange, suffocating cold wash over me, freezing me to the core. I stumbled into the stairwell and practically threw myself down the stairs, my only thought being to get away, to put as much distance between myself and whatever was up there as possible. Without thinking, I ended up on the basement level, right in front of a door marked Level 3 Restricted Access. I hesitated, remembering Joe's warning, but the footsteps were getting closer. I could hear them echoing down the stairs, relentless, unhurried, like they knew I had nowhere to go. With shaking hands, I yanked open the door and slipped inside, hoping that whatever was out there wouldn't follow me. The third basement was pitch black. I fumbled for my flashlight, my hands trembling as I clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a long, narrow hallway lined with doors. The air down here was thick, stale, and there was an odd smell, like old copper and mold. I shivered, the cold seeping through me as I walked deeper into the basement, each step echoing eerily in the silence. The hallway seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning in ways that didn't make sense. I knew I hadn't walked that far, but it felt like I was miles away from the stairs, from the safety of the upper floors. The silence was so complete it felt like it was pressing down on me, smothering me. Then I heard a faint, whispering voice, so soft I almost missed it. The words were distorted, garbled, like someone was speaking underwater. I swung my flashlight around, but the beam only illuminated the empty hallway. I felt panic rising in me, my breathing growing shallow as I tried to make sense of what I was hearing. The whispers grew louder, layering over each other until they formed a cacophony of sound, an unsettling chorus of voices filling the air. They were saying things I couldn't understand, words that made my skin crawl, words that sounded like they were meant to stay buried. And then, in the middle of the hallway, I saw a figure standing perfectly still, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. It was tall, its outline barely visible in the darkness, but I could tell it was watching me. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its gaze, cold and unfeeling, piercing through me. I took a step back, my heart pounding as I tried to hold the flashlight steady. The figure didn't move, but the whispers grew louder, filling my head, making it hard to think. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot, like something was holding me there, forcing me to look, to listen. Then the figure took a step forward, and I felt an overwhelming wave of dread wash over me. I knew, without a doubt, that if I let it reach me, I wouldn't make it out of that basement. I forced myself to move, stumbling backward, my eyes never leaving the figure. It kept coming, slow and steady, as if it had all the time in the world. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing in the narrow hallway as I raced back the way I'd come. The whispers followed me, growing louder, more desperate, pleading, as if they were trying to pull me back. I could hear the figure's footsteps behind me, heavy and relentless, matching my pace as I ran. I reached the stairwell and threw myself up the steps, my lungs burning as I climbed, never daring to look back. The whispers faded, the cold receded, but I didn't stop until I was back on the main floor, slamming the stairwell door behind me. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, my heart racing as I tried to calm down. The building was silent again, the air warm, almost comforting. But I knew I'd never be able to forget what I'd seen down there, what had followed me up those stairs. I quit the next morning, handing Joe my keys without a word. He looked at me, nodded, and said, "I told you not to go down there." I didn't say anything back. There was nothing left to say.